Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Marty Ross, and this is another Conversations with Marty Ross MD tonight. I'm actually hosting this webinar from Austin, Texas tonight. I'm actually on the road with my two Basenjis in my camper van and came down here to do some things related to my supplement store. Many of you know that is housed out of Austin, Texas. So anyhow, the room setup may look a little different to you. I'm in a temporary office space I'm being allowed to use tonight to do this. So I didn't bring my fancy microphone either, so I hope you hear me okay. And I didn't bring my fancy camera, so I'm just using what's available to me off of my my MacBook Pro tonight. So I apologize for that. I failed to bring those components along. For those of you that are new here, I see a number of new names, and I'm glad to see you here. And I see a lot of familiar names here as well, too. And I'm glad to see you back as well. I know that many people return because you're getting value out of this. And I hope that you new people do as well, too, that you get some insights and some help related to your questions regarding Lyme disease. So the way that this webinar works, you can participate two ways. One, you can write a question to me. But if that sounds like a big step, the other thing you can do is actually listen to the questions as I read them. If you're in the live version tonight, you're actually going to be able to see them show up on your screen. They show up in the live version on the screen. In the recorded version, they don't show up. So you will see me read those out as well, too. And then let's see here. Oh, and then I am creating a recording of tonight's webinar, as I usually do, and I will try to have that out to you tomorrow morning because I'm here in Austin. I'll probably get it out a couple hours earlier than I normally would when I'm in Seattle. So you'll probably see this somewhere around 7 to 7:30 a.m. Seattle time. So more that's 9 to 9:30 a.m. here in Austin as well, too. Okay, and let's see. So this is our last webinar for the month of October. And so there'll be a new series that when you get the email tomorrow morning indicating that the webinar recording is done, I will also include links in there to sign up for the next set of webinars. And those webinars will be happening in the month of November. I may actually, we'll have to see. I think in November, I'm going to be starting to switch these to every Wednesday night instead of Thursday. I had indicated to many of you before that the time, I'm having a hard time making my Thursday commitments with you, and I want to start looking at doing these on Wednesdays. If I've done my math correctly, we're probably going to be off for 2 weeks because, again, I will be beginning these in November. Okay? All right. So anyhow, let's go ahead and get started here. Oh, one last thing. When you write your question, the only thing I ask is only hit your enter key one time. Unfortunately, the way that this webinar chat box works is every time you hit an enter key, it sends a separate question to me. So I ask that you just write one long run-on question. Okay? All right. So let's go ahead and get started here. Let me post up the first question. Hello, Alex. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. Thank you for all these amazing webinars. You're welcome. When treating for mold toxicity, do you see better results using natural medications like clay charcoal compared to prescription options like cholestyramine or Welchol? What do you recommend? Thanks. So I guess there's two parts to that question. Number one, depending on the specific toxins you have, if you primarily have a black mold toxin problem, for instance, activated charcoal may be a better way to go than cholestyramine. If you have a gliotoxin problem, bentonite clay may be a better option than cholestyramine, okay? But if your problem is one where you have a broad range of like maybe 4 different kinds of mold toxins that are built up in you, then you may want to do one of two options. One is use a supplement that has a number of different binders in it, like a GI Detox or a Mycopole by Research Nutritionals. Both of those products have in them some activated charcoal, some clay. In the case of GI Detox, that's zeolite clay, but they have clay. which would fill the role of that bentonite clay that I mentioned earlier. There's some silica in there, and there is some humic and fulvic acid in both of those as well too. Now, that's a broad spectrum binder. It can handle a number of things. And in some ways, cholestyramine is a broad spectrum binder. All things being equal, I prefer to go the supplements because I think they're easier to take. The cholestyramine has one major drawback, and that is the majority of people will get some constipation on it. And I don't find that to be the degree of problem when you use the supplement binders, okay? There is one other really broad spectrum supplement binder you can use too, which is pectin, pectin powder. Pectin comes from citrus and comes from apples, and that seems to handle a broad range of different different mold toxins as well too. Okay, so that's another option to consider. So what do I think is better? It really depends on if you have one toxin. There's certain binders that work better for each specific toxin. If you have a broad range of ones, because it tends not to give you constipation, I tend to go with a GI detox or a mycopil, for instance. Okay. Let me do a screen share here for you. I'm going to show you on the article that I have about mold toxicity. In there, I actually have let's see. That's not what I want to do. Interesting. Okay. It's got an odd message there. Anyhow, let's do, so I'm going to do a screen share here. I think I'm doing a screen share here. Am I? No, that didn't go. Let's try that again. Okay, there we go. That does not appear to be working tonight for some reason. Let me try that again one more time. Huh. No. I apologize. For some reason, this share function does not appear to be working tonight. Let me go back here again. Try that one more time. I'm not sure what's going on there. As I click the share button, it seems to be going, but then it's not connecting the way it's supposed to. Anyhow, all right. So unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to share with you tonight my computer screen. But if as many of you know, I have my online website called Treat Lyme by Marty Ross MD, located at treatlyme.net. In there, I have an online Lyme guide that gives you about any piece of information you could need to manage Lyme disease. So what you can do is in the search bar at the top, just write in mold toxicity and you'll find my article. And in that article, you'll see a panel that tells you, a paragraph that tells you, for instance, that for gliotoxin, the best binder is bentonite clay. And for trichosethine, I think, which is black mold toxin, activated charcoal is good, but actually cholestyramine can help as well too. So anyhow, look in there, you'll see a description of that table. Okay. All right. So let's see here. All right. Thanks for that question, Alex. Good luck to you. Hello, Alex, again. Now that the Novavax COVID vaccine has been approved as a booster, would you be recommending this vaccine over the others? Which booster will you be getting? Same as your previous ones, Pfizer, I believe, or switching to Moderna on Novavax? Thoughts? So I am sticking in my own personal choice. As many of you know, I talked last week about that I do plan on getting the booster. I haven't done so yet. I'm probably going to be doing that once I get back to Seattle. But I did not want to do it as I went on the road, because when I do get the boosters before, they always give me a little bit flu-like symptoms, as many of us do get those kind of reactions. So I didn't want to do that on the road. But when I get back to Seattle, I plan on getting that done. I tend to stick, I have been using the Moderna, and I plan on sticking with Moderna. In my opinion, I don't think there's any difference between Pfizer and Moderna in terms of efficacy or in terms of somebody getting having complications from it or not. So I'm not recommending it over others. I understand the issue of it being approved, but I still think that the data that has given some of these boosters preliminary approval, or initially the vaccine preliminary emergency approval by the FDA, I think there's enough safety information there for my comfort levels to recommend it. Okay. All right. Thanks for our question, Alex. Hello, Jim. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. Thanks again for these great webinars. As you've been reviewing your recent work, putting together your new book, what have struck you as the most important developments in the Lyme world the last year? That's interesting. So yeah, so as Jim alludes to, I am redrafting another book. In fact, I have it redrafted. It went off to the editor last week, and I'm actually have hired an artist to do a book cover for me, so it's going to be more interesting than the last one. The new book is called Hacking Lyme Disease, an Action Guide to Wellness. And you're going to see that it is quite an expansion over what I had in my previous book, the Lyme Disease Anti-Germs book that I had. So this book has an opening in it that has 3 sections in it that reviews the science that has been created by my Lyme data, showing that what are the best treatment options, including antibiotics versus various alternative medicines like Rife machines, et cetera. And so I review their data that basically says your best bet of getting well is to use some antibiotics and to work with a Lyme literate medical doctor. I also review some of their data and give you information about how helpful is a Rife machine, for instance. So in that opening, also, I do talk about that we got to protect the gut microbiome because ultimately that is what regulates your brain, your immune system, et cetera. But I also acknowledge there's trade-offs. If you have to kill germs, ultimately get well. That's what the MyLyme data information shows. That's what my experience shows. And so there is risk of harm to the gut microbiome, but then I lay out options to protect the gut microbiome. And finally, in that opening, I also include theories as to why people don't recover from Lyme disease. And I think that over time, we may have a better understanding of what some of those things are. So I would say that that is a big update, that chapter that I have in there, which lays out some reasons people may not recover, as well as steps you can take to address it. Okay. In the other major part of the book still is my treatment protocol. And then I have updated to be current with current understanding of various antibiotics and herbal antibiotics, the different treatment options for each of the germs that you see. So I still have an anti-germ section. The other thing I added in there was a critical review of various alternative medicines. So there's a whole chapter on Rife machines. There's a whole chapter on SOT treatment. There's a chapter on hydrogen peroxide and ozone. So you're going to see a pretty comprehensive guide, especially for somebody that's new, hasn't heard of any of these crazy things people do, where I review them and I give you what the research tells us, the chances that some of these things are going to help. And then finally, in my new book, I have added a section that has key articles from treatlyme.net that round out the treatment. Like there's a section on low-dose naltrexone I'm including a section on Herxheimer reactions. I'm including information on mold toxicity. And the big change that I think that, to answer your question, the big thing that I'm seeing that's been very beneficial this last year is the introduction of peptide treatments. And so I have a section in there on peptides. And that information, you can find it all online right now. You don't have to wait for my book to come out, but the book will have it all consolidated. Why do I think that peptide therapies has been one of the big game changers? I'm seeing, especially with using the BPC 157 peptide. So peptides, peptides are short strands of amino acids, not long enough to be a protein. So proteins are chains of amino acids that are at least 40 or more, and strands that are less than 40 are called peptides. Okay. And there's a number of peptides that we naturally make in our bodies. And they have various properties. One of those is something called BPC 157 that is made in the stomach lining. Its main purpose, and the reason the stomach makes it, is to help with GI function and healing of injured colon and small intestine, for instance, okay? But it has been shown to actually be great at repairing tissue damage, and that can be muscle, tendon, joint, ligaments, and nerve damage as well, too. The other thing it's useful for is in trying to balance out the function of the immune system so that it becomes more balanced to fight infection. And so what I mean by that is we generally recognize a couple ways we can divide the immune system. There's something called Th1 immune system, and there's another part that I put two things together called Th2 and Th17. Think of Th1 as your offensive squad. They're fighting the battle against known germs, okay? And then think of Th2 as your defensive squad. So in Th1 are your T cells and killer cells that actually attack an infection that has been identified by the immune system. In the Th2, which is I call the defense, that is made up of your allergy cells called mast cells. It's made up of your B white blood cells that produce antibodies, and it also is made of a bunch of cells that are involved in autoimmune reactions against illness as well too. And then Th17 is the immune cells that line your skin and your mucous membranes that will attack an invader even if they don't know what it is, okay? So that's your defensive squad, okay? So one of the things that can happen, a theory is why people may not get full recovery in Lyme, is that we're not getting enough help from our Th1. You can poison the germs all you want, but if your white blood cells are not stepping in to kill them and remove them, we're not going to get well, okay? You have to have both functions. You can't just poison. You got to have poisoning and you got to have killing with the immune system as well too. Okay. Poisoning is antibiotics, whether they're herbal or prescription. Okay. So one of the things that can happen is you can get imbalance in the amount of Th2, Th17 relative to Th1. Excessive Th2, Th17 releases cytokines that suppress Th1. Okay. So BPC 157 can do some regulation there too. Okay. Other peptides that I'm finding beneficial is a peptide called cerebrolysin that is very useful at improving thinking and correcting traumatic brain injury. Okay, and that is found in an oral product made by Integrated Peptides called CerebroPep. That's currently out of stock, but they tell me sometime in the next month or two it'll be back in stock again. And then the other things I'm finding useful out of the peptides is something called TB4-FRAG. TB4-FRAG actually turns on, is useful at helping with inflammation and getting a balance in Th1 and Th2. And then finally, the fourth one I'm finding great benefit from until they recently ran out is something called KPV. KPV is a segment of amino acids that come from something called melanocyte stimulating hormone. Melanocytes are those things that give your skin color. I think it's melanocyte stimulating hormone or melatonin. No, it's melanocyte stimulating hormone. Anyhow, those amino acid components that KPV is useful for is a very strong stabilizer of your mast cells. So it's useful for people with mast cell activation. And also it can help balance inflammation in the body due to an imbalance in Th1 and Th2. Okay, now those peptides that I just indicated to you have changed my treatments. I have to admit there's a problem right now in that the only oral manufacturer we have of those has been very inconsistent in its manufacturing process because they haven't done a good job of estimating their demand. I gave them an earful a while back about that, but you'll see that there are some shortages of those if you go try to get those at my website, but probably within a month or two, most of those will be back again. There's also a whole slew of IV injectable peptides, but the regulations around those gets a little trickier. Even though they're available, it's not clear how medical boards feel about doctors using those. So I'm staying away from those. But I would say that's been a big game changer. And then finally, the last thing I have found is a game changer over this last year is some information that I learned over a year ago now about both Bartonella and Babesia. And you'll find this information in both of those chapters, the chapter called Kills Babesia and the one called Kills Bartonella, a brief guide. And that is that both of these infections have the ability to weave themselves in with your blood clotting protein called fibrin and form these things called fibrin nest. And so you get germ wrapped in with these fibers of fibrin, and then they stick themselves on your blood vessel wall, and the immune system can't get at them, and the antibiotics can't get at them, in theory, okay? So what you can do to break that up is lumbrokinase. It's an enzyme that comes from earthworms. That is our strongest enzyme at breaking up fibrin. And as I've added that in my practice, I'll be quite honest with you, I've seen some strong reactions. I was having people take a pill twice a day of a 16 milligram pill, but I was clobbering too many people with that. So I had to draw back and just do one to start with and eventually working up to 2 a day, okay? Other big changes, and I would say this is not quite the last year, this is actually over the last few years, is all of my treatments now, I'm incorporating something to deal with persisters. And that could be a liposomal cinnamon clove oregano. That could be a dapsone, although I rarely use dapsone. It could be a disulfiram. I rarely use disulfiram. But it could also be the herbs of cryptolepis and Japanese knotweed. That is based on research that came out this last year. So something that came out this last year showing that cryptolepis, which we traditionally use to treat Babesia, is actually quite effective against Lyme and growing and persisting Lyme. And I've seen some good improvements with that. And Japanese knotweed too, same thing. So Japanese knotweed does a good job with growing and persisting Lyme, growing and persister Bartonella. Cryptolepis does a good job with growing and persisting Lyme, growing and persister Bartonella as well too. Okay, so those are the big changes. One last big change that you'll see in the Bartonella chapter, and it's included on the updated the information in my book, but I've already included in the online version of the articles. If you look at my Kills Bartonella article, you're going to see that some of my top recommended treatments include diflucan. That's interesting. So diflucan, many of you know, is an azole. It's used to treat yeast. Okay, it's also known as fluconazole. So as I've tried to create breakthroughs in my treatments, I mean, I've been working with things like methylene blue and rifampin and all that, but there's just this core set of people that I still am having a hard time getting breakthroughs on their Bartonella treatment. So I went back and reviewed the literature from 3 years ago by Dr. Ying Zhang in his lab at Johns Hopkins. And what he showed in his studies is that one of the azoles called clotrimazole, which is in the same family as fluconazole, did a great job of killing growing and persister Bartonella. The trouble is it's only available in creams, and even if you have it compounded, we don't know if it's well absorbed. So I never used it. I know there's some companies that were compounding it, but I never used it. The one thing though that I've been adding in the last 6 months, and I've included in that article, is diflucan as part of my Bartonella treatments. And the one thing I'm seeing is those people that are really jammed up, it has been a game changer for them. It gives a lot of mental clearing and seems to be, in my experience, is becoming one of my more potent Bartonella drugs. Okay, so I know I've just said a lot of stuff, but you asked an interesting question. Okay, so I just walked you through what the updates are going to be to the book. And so everyone, it's going to be called Hacking Lyme Disease. I anticipate publication somewhere in about 1 to 2 months. I'm self-publishing it, but I am working with an editor, and I am working with an artist, a well-known Alaska artist named Yvonne Zerbetz, to come up with a cover for me as well for that. Okay. And then the big changes, diflucan, the herbs of cryptolepis and Japanese knotweed in terms of their ability to help with persisters for Bartonella and Lyme. The other one being peptide therapies have made a big change in my practice, and lumbrokinase to break up fibrin nest. Okay. All right. Thanks for that question, Jim. So everyone, I just want to make sure that usually I do a pretty good job of trying to give you an explanation of terms when I use them, but I just want to talk briefly what a persister is. So again, we've discovered now in the last 5 years that for 6 years for Lyme, and about 2 or 3 years ago now for Bartonella, that both germs have growing state, and then they have a state where they go into hibernation. We call those persisters, okay? Those persisters basically slow their metabolic activity way down and ignore the standard antibiotics that we throw at them. Probably it's about 10% or so of the germs that become persisters, but they may be the reason that our treatments fail. If we don't clear those, that may be why the treatment fails, okay? Now, in terms of terminology, I don't want to confuse that term persisters with the Lyme germ forms. So Lyme disease has appearances, the way the germ looks, and then it has growth states, okay? So the appearances are spirochete, that's the corkscrew looking thing. The germ can live inside of cells and lose its covering. That's called an L form. And then there's a microscopic cyst, okay? Now, the spirochetes and the cysts can be growing or they can be hibernating, okay? We don't know what goes on inside of cells to be able to tell you whether the intracellular is growing or hibernating or not. We just don't know. There's no science that tells me about that, okay? All right. So anyhow, I just wanted to clarify that for everyone too. Hello, Lynn. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. I just learned in a mast cell seminar that VEGF can contribute to mast cell activation. It looks like one of the actions of BPC-157 is to increase VEGF. So I'm wondering if some of the symptoms I'm having could be a result of the BPC-157. Was there any information about this in the conference you attended recently? Also, do you know if LDN raises dopamine? Okay. So Lynn, yeah, in the conference I was at on peptide therapies, that was, gosh, what, about 3 or 4 weeks ago now? It's been about 4 weeks ago now. The big thing is, so I did pose that. I mean, it was an interesting panel of experts. These were the top people in the country working with peptides. And I did ask them about allergies and what the general feeling and mast cell activation, the general feeling of most of those experts was that if the peptides are leading to allergic reaction or leading to mast cell activation, it's probably not due to the actual peptide itself, but rather the fillers that are put into either the injectable or the oral agents. I understand your theoretical concern about the VEGF, but I got to tell you, in my experience, my people that have mast cell activation are not declining when they use BPC-157. They've been getting some help, okay? And again, if I were to want to use a peptide to treat mast cell activation, even though BPC-157 can help, and I think TB4 frag can help, your main peptide that's going to help mast cell activation is going to be the KPV, okay? All right. So everyone, just so you know, if in my book, there will be a chapter on peptides, but if you want to get that information now, take a look. I would do a screen share, but again, my screen share function for some reason is not working here tonight. So if you want to if you want to read about peptides, go to treatlyme.net and just write peptides in on the search bar up there. You'll see my article on peptides that I wrote and updated. I updated it actually after I came back from this recent conference as well too. Okay. All right. In terms of low dose naltrexone raising dopamine, I'm not aware of that. I don't know. I actually don't know. I would have to look at that to see. Okay. All right. Good luck to you, Lynn. Thank you. Hello, Heidi. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. Thank you for hosting these webinars. My son was diagnosed with a positive Lyme test from IGenex, 2 or 3 bands, 23 and 41, but has never had the positive 5-band diagnosis by CDC standards. In addition to the Lyme, he was positive for Bartonella, Babesia, and tick-borne relapsing fever. Is it possible to have tick-borne relapsing fever and Lyme, or are these carried by 2 different ticks? Or could tick-borne relapsing fever be the reason his Lyme test never turned fully positive? So to be clear, he has a positive Lyme test, okay? What you're probably talking about with IGenex, there's something known as the CDC standard, the Centers for Disease Control standard, and then there's another standard that IGenex uses and most of us that treat Lyme use. that other standard that most of us use looks to see that you have positive bands at either 23, 39, 41, I'm sorry, 23, 31, 39, 41, or 83-93. If you're positive at 2 out of those 6, many of us, including IGenex, calls that a positive test, okay? The IGenex standard is considered to be more sensitive, meaning it can find more Lyme than the CDC standard, which does not even look at 31 and 39 and doesn't look at 83, 93. We think they're missing something in terms of their standard, okay? So I would call your IGenex positive 23, 41 a positive test, okay? All right, now, we think that ticks can transmit a lot of stuff, including Bartonella, Babesia, and tick-borne relapsing fever. It is possible that your son got infected with all of these from the same tick. Possible. Bartonella, I have to tell you, there's an interesting statement that was made recently by one of the physicians, I believe a physician or a PhD from Centers for Disease Control, that is an expert on Bartonella, who at I believe that the federal government's task force looking at Lyme and tick-borne infections, that he was noted as saying that Bartonella is pretty ubiquitous, meaning there's a lot of it out there, and he does not necessarily believe it's all tick-borne. In fact, he's probably more in the camp that says it's not tick spread, that Bartonella is not tick spread. I'm in the camp that says it probably is. But I want to let you know that's a controversial idea as to whether ticks actually spread Bartonella or not. Most of us that treat Lyme do think that they do. We read the evidence that way. But what his point was is that there's so much of that has been spread by other vectors that probably in a lot of people that when we test them and they have Bartonella and we think it came from the tick, maybe they already had it in them from another reason. Okay, so I'll just throw that one out as well too. Okay, all right. Good luck to you, Heidi. Good luck to your son, too. Hello, Shannon. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. I find these Q&As very helpful. Great. I'm glad you do. Will you please talk about monolaurin, how it works, what it does, how helpful it is, specifically for Bartonella, if it makes a difference, which tick-borne disease if it makes a difference, which tick-borne disease you have. So I use monolaurin primarily as an antiviral agent. I have not seen any evidence that says it would work on Bartonella. I think that's what you're asking, but I use it as an antiviral. I know that some of my colleagues use it for anti-yeast potential, but I have not seen any evidence that suggests that it's useful against tick-borne infections, okay? All right. Thanks for the question, Shannon. Good luck to you. Hello, Alyssa. Hello, Dr. Ross. Is there any health risk associated with long-term years of taking supplements? I've been taking daily the following: curcumin, vitamin C, D, zinc, quercetin, and glutathione for almost 2 years. My GP stated recently that I should be careful of the possible long-term health effects some of the supplements may cause, since some are not FDA approved. Any thoughts or perspective would be appreciated. I would agree. I don't know that we have long-term studies or we don't have long-term studies of humans using most of these supplements. Okay. But I've had people on these things for years and I haven't had a trouble with them. So I would say on the one hand, your physician is right there. We don't know. But generally most of these substances are pretty ubiquitous and harmless. And I don't see that there's long-term problems here. Okay. All right. Thanks for the question. Hello, Sharon. Hi, Dr. Ross. Thanks for sharing all this amazing information with 2 exclamation points. Thank you. I appreciate that. I was diagnosed and treated in 2010 to 2013 by an LLMD in the US. I'm Canadian. I then following, let's see, I then followed Stephen Buhner's protocol for another 2 years or so, and all was good. I suspect there's another wandering part to your question here, Sharon. Hold on a minute. And then you say, I'll get this eventually. Yeah. So the point is here, Sharon, don't hit the enter key when you write your question. I think you probably know that now. You have to write a big, long run on, okay? So here's the last part of your question. I think in the last year or more, I've been experiencing arthritic pain and have begun Stephen's protocol for Lyme, arthritis, and collagen support to see what happens. Do you have any further advice that may help me? Should I include lumbrokinase? Also, you don't mention cannabis in any of your protocols. Thoughts? So I don't have cannabis specifically in my Lyme disease treatment protocol, but you can take a look. I do believe cannabis can be helpful for pain. It can be helpful for a number of things. Take a look at my, just write the word medical marijuana or cannabis into the search bar at treatlyme.net. Again, I would show that article to you right now, but unfortunately my screen share is not working here tonight for some reason. So, but you'll see, I have reviewed cannabis and the possibilities of what it can help with, mostly for pain, maybe for sleep. And you have to worry about whether you're using, or not worry, but TLC. I'm blanking here. Not TLC. TLC is tender loving care. Oh, what are the three initials of what's in cannabis? So there's CBD, obviously, and then there's the stuff that starts with a T. I'm blanking on it, but each of them has different properties. Okay, and so in the article, I do review that with you as well too. Okay, all right. So anyhow, sorry, I can't keep my TLCs and everything else straight here tonight. Let's see. Let's see, should I include lumbrokinase? Also, you don't mention cannabis. Okay, so let me give you some thoughts at what you might want to look at. So Buhner is very thorough. I mean, he's good at looking at things from an herbal standpoint and doing things to get inflammation down and collagen support. But he was writing his protocols before peptide therapies, okay? And so the one thing, again, that I mentioned earlier tonight in one of the earlier questions, as to what do I see as some of the big changes in the last year at peptide therapy. And so you may want to take a look at the benefits of BPC 157. I am finding it to actually be quite effective in people that have I've treated. And for instance, and some of the remaining symptoms are body pains. It's made a big difference there. Joint pains, it's made a big difference there as well too. And a part of that is it can be anti-inflammatory because it shifts the balance in that TH1, TH2, TH17 that I mentioned earlier, but also it fixes damage. And so a starting dose on that is a 1 pill twice a day. And sometimes people even get benefits up to 2 or 3 pills twice a day. It is a peptide. The oral versions tend to be expensive, but they're a lot cheaper than what IV peptides are. Okay, so I know people are very concerned about peptide costs, and I agree they're expensive. But the comparison would be IV peptides, which is even through the roof, basically. You'll find on my site that I have dramatically lowered the price over what is suggested by the manufacturer, and I can't go any lower. They won't let me go any lower. So I've tried to make them as affordable as I can. And also, as you know, on my at Marty Ross MD supplements, which is located at treatlyme.com, that I cover your if you are U.S. citizen, I cover your state and local taxes, and I ship to you for free if it's over $50, and the peptides are over $50. Okay, so anyhow, take a look at that idea as well too. Okay. Hello, Colleen. Let's see. Is it possible that treatment for yeast overgrowth with phytostan and probiotics could cause nausea? Thank you. Yeah, it is possible. So in So phytostan, everyone, is a herbal compound that has a number of components in it that can kill yeast, okay? And specifically, it's got in it some powder caprylic acid, rosemary, thyme oil, I believe, and then something called indolacinic acid. The rosemary and thyme in some people can be nauseating, okay? So yeah, it's possible that that is giving you some nausea. You could, there's a thorn product that is, I think it's SPF 720, I believe, that is just the undolacinic acid. And that is an option to look at. I don't carry it at my supplement store, but that can sometimes be a helpful alternative for people as well, too. Okay. All right. Good luck to you, Colleen. Hello, Diane. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. Thanks so much in advance. I have a rare nerve condition over the surface of my eyes that holds me in constant pain. Being treated by a university clinic, Bartonella is the ongoing possible cause, or is Lyme, both of which I've been diagnosed with IGenex. Do you have any insights on what can be done to minimize the nerve pain? So if you're working with conventional docs, they probably, I'm going to go through a range of things. Okay. So first of all, nerve pain, the things that we use in conventional medicine and prescription medicine would include things like anti-seizure medicines like Lyrica or gabapentin. You can also look at using some of the antidepressant medicines like that would fall in the tricyclic antidepressant medicine category. Those would be things like nortriptyline, imipramine, amitriptyline. Those are things that can help change the transmission of the nerve pain, okay? And if you're working with conventional doctors and you're having a lot of nerve pain, that is probably what they have already tried for you too. The other thing that can be helpful is narcotics, but most of us are trying not to use narcotics these days because of problems with people getting addicted to the narcotics too. From an herbal medicine standpoint, when somebody's got nerve pain, I want to do things to repair the nerve injury, regardless of what the cause is, okay? So I like using glutathione. Glutathione is a very powerful antioxidant that can repair nerve damage from the inside. Where we have a lot of evidence of that being helpful actually is in diabetic neuropathy, okay? Raising glutathione can be helpful, okay? And usually what I use for my glutathione, you're going to use glutathione, you want to try to do a liposomal variety. Liposomal varieties mean that they're microscopically wrapped in fat to increase the absorption. The products I like for that are made by Research Nutritionals, and they're called Trifortify, okay? They've got good evidence showing good absorption on that. The other thing I like to do is to try to repair the nerve membrane. And the nerve membranes are made up of a layer. The outer nerve cell membrane is a phospholipid bilipid layer. Okay, so it's a fat layer, basically, made up of type of fats called phospholipids. And you can take phospholipids to repair that. The compound I'd like to use for that is a product called ATP 360, which is mainly made up of those phospholipids. It also has some vitamin Bs and some other things in it that help your cell energy factories called mitochondria work better too. But you would use that as 3 pills 1 time a day. Included in there is CoQ10. So be aware that you may not want to do that one if you happen to be taking something to treat Babesia that is either malorone, atovaquone, or mepron. Okay, you don't want to interact. They have bad interaction for those with the CoQ10. Okay. And then the other thing, again, that I'm starting to work with more and more is that I'm having some success with some of my patients is the BPC 157 because it can repair injury, basically. And that would be a pill twice a day. Currently, the pill form is on back order with the manufacturer, as I noted earlier, but there is a spray version, and the spray is just as effective as the pill version. 2 sprays is equal to 1 pill, so you do 2 sprays twice a day on that one. Okay? All right. Good luck to you, Diane. Oh, Diane, one last thing. One of the things that I find helpful for people with intractable nerve pain is to actually use acupuncture. Sometimes can be quite effective. It seems to change the nerve signaling and the nerve transmission. Okay, so if you haven't tried that, you may want to try to see working with an acupuncturist. If you are a person that's scared of needles like me, I'm one of those people, a style of acupuncture that can be very useful is actually Japanese style acupuncture. And Japanese style acupuncture, they don't tend to put the needle in as deeply. They just get it into the outer layer of your skin. So it tends not to hurt the way that Chinese style acupuncture does. Okay, so that would be something for you to consider as well too. Okay, good luck to you. Hello, Paula. Let's see. Is there a liquid version of Candida meds or supplements that I can take because of low stomach acid? I have malabsorption issues and had to stop antibiotics because Candida is blocking my treatments. Will nystatin and fluconazole work for someone like me? Betaine, ACV, etc. doesn't work. You know, Paula, I can't guarantee that nystatin and fluconazole will work. But I have used them on people that have low stomach acid issues, and I have found good results. So it's something to consider. Okay. All right. Good luck to you. Hello, Jean Marie. Let's see. Hello. This is my first time with Dr. Ross. I went undiagnosed for many years, becoming disabled with our 5th child, was 3 years old. Well, welcome here, Jean Marie. Let me see if I can find the rest of your question here. Just a minute. So here's another part. Let's see. Finally, I found a Lyme literate doctor, tried many combinations. Best one is 3 Monolaurin, 600 milligrams Zithromax, 100 milligrams fluconazole plus medications for insomnia. First, do you believe that I have some Lyme victims can relapse within a few days after stopping medication? I feel as I'm living on the edge. A few of our children have Lyme, but it takes months or years before they relapse. Okay, hold on. Jean Marie, I just need to make sure I didn't miss another part to your question here. I'm not sure if I got everything, but I'll try to answer. Oh, here we go. I see what happened. So here's the second part of your question. Your website says that 200 milligrams fluconazole combined with 600 milligrams Zithromax is good for Bartonella. I have Babesia, Bartonella, and Lyme. I take 3 Monolaurin, 600 milligrams Zithromax, and 100 milligrams fluconazole. Thank you. All right, let me look at this other part that I have here too. You also said, finally found, okay, so this is your second part. I've tried many combinations. Best one is Monolaurin, Zithromax, and fluconazole. First, do you believe that some Lyme victims can relapse within a few days after stopping medication? I feel as I'm living on the edge. A few of our children have Lyme, but it takes months or years before they relapse. Okay, so in terms of relapse either occurs because when somebody gets well, we don't get rid of all the germs and their immune system doesn't step in and complete the job. And in that situation, yes, some people can go on and relapse years down the road. Okay. But the other reason that people relapse is that during while they're on treatment, they don't treat long enough. Okay. And specifically with Babesia, we find the best chance of preventing relapse for Babesia is at least 5 months of treatment. And if you happen to have a strain of Babesia called Babesia decani, sometimes treating for 10 months is what needs to be done. Okay, just to let you know that. What I try to do with my treatments to decrease the chances of a Lyme relapse or a Bartonella relapse I try to treat until somebody is well for at least 2 months before I stop. Or if I can't get them all the way well, I will try to treat until they're at a good plateau for at least 4 months. And no matter what I do to try to adjust their treatment, change antibiotics, put them on peptides, whatever it is, whatever magic I tried to do. If they're not getting better, and they've been plateaued for 4 months, then I'll say it's time to stop and see what happens. Okay. Keep in mind, a quick relapse means you did not treat long enough the first time. It just means that. Okay. Versus years down the road relapse means that probably you did a good job knocking everything down with the antibiotics, but you didn't get adequate help from the immune system cleaning things up. And specifically in the world of Lyme and Bartonella, one of the reasons people may get those late relapses is that we just recently discovered 6 years and 3 years ago, 6 years ago for Lyme and 3 years ago for Bartonella, that there are these things called persisters, those hibernating forms that I talked about earlier. Okay, all right. Good luck to you. It sounds like a good treatment that you're on, by the way, too. That's a good Bartonella and Lyme treatment, actually, as well as a Babesia treatment, too. Okay, so your Babesia treatment would be the azithromycin, the monolaurin. Your Lyme and Bartonella treatment would be the azithromycin coupled with the diflucan. Okay, all right. Good luck to you. Oh, and Jen Marie, thanks for being bold and asking a question on your first time. That was good. I just want to note that. That's good. Hello, Monica. Hi, Dr. Ross. My daughter has cognitively disabled and mute due to tick-borne infection from ages 12 to now 27. What to do? Oh boy. Monica, I wish I had a quick answer there. I can't give a quick answer on that. I need a lot of information beyond what you've said here, unfortunately. This is something that you probably need to sit down and visit with a Lyme literate doctor. I hope you have, but for me to give some insights, that's what I would need to do. It's almost spent a good hour and a half, 2 hours with you trying to sort this thing through. Unfortunately, I'm not taking new patients anymore, but yeah, I can't do it in this kind of a forum. Okay. I'm sorry to hear this about your daughter as well. Good luck. Hello, Barbara. Hello, Dr. Ross. Thanks very much for being so generous with your time and webinars. You're welcome. I have been struggling with my second bout of sinusitis. My ENT doctor may want to prescribe cortisone spray. Would this be contraindicated with chronic Lyme disease? I know that it is advisable not to take prednisolone with chronic Lyme. Thanks so much for advice on this. On this is unwise ? Okay, so it is true that if you take systemic steroids, meaning injectable or oral, that you can get some suppression of the immune system and Lyme may get more active. Okay, that's true. All right. When you do steroid nose sprays, some of that does get absorbed into the bloodstream, so could go systemic, but probably most of it stays up here in the nose. It is, I have had people that have done steroid nose sprays that have worsening of their Lyme. I have had people that have tolerated them. So it's not as the type of contraindication that oral or IV would be. There is some risk, but it is not as great a risk, I think, as doing oral or IV. One thing you could talk to your doctor about before trying the steroids is to see if antihistamine, those sprays would be an option for you as well, too. Okay. All right. Good luck to you. Hello, TJ. Let's see. My hands get very cold whenever I take anything that kills. Is this a Herx? I wouldn't call it TJ. I wouldn't call it a typical Herx reaction. So let's look at what a Herx reaction is. So, as many of you know, when you feel sick from Lyme, the reason you feel sick is that your immune system overproduces a group of chemicals called cytokines. Okay, so when a white blood cell sees a germ or a toxin or a yeast, it produces, or even COVID, it produces these things called cytokines. And cytokines are good and bad. On the good side, they turn the white blood cells on, they cause more white blood cells to be made, and they help the white cells work better to fight infection. That's all good. Okay, that's what they're supposed to do. But in Lyme disease, and sometimes in mold toxicity, and sometimes in yeast overgrowth, the immune system does not do a good job, but it keeps trying harder and harder and eventually produces too many cytokines, okay? And too many cytokines give you all the symptoms that we call Lyme disease. They give you confusion, they give you brain fog, they disturb your sleep, they make you hurt all over, they interfere with hormone production, they make neuropathy occur, et cetera, all right? So typically when somebody herxes, the reaction they're gonna have is all related, or what happens in a herx then is your immune system sees all the dead germ parts and makes more cytokines. So what you should be seeing with a herx are what are cytokine symptoms that get worse, or your underlying Lyme symptoms that get worse. Now, I don't typically think of cold hands and cold feet as being something that occurs in everyone, but in some people with their Lyme, it does. And maybe that is cytokine related. So if your underlying Lyme or tick-borne infection has a lot of cold hands and cold fingers with it and cold feet with it, and that also is what flares whenever you have a herx, then that probably is a herx. It's probably cytokine related. Okay. All right. Good luck to you, TJ. Hello, Mary. Hi, Dr. Ross. And thanks again for taking our questions. You're welcome. Let's see, is 1 to 2 months at your recommended dose of 500, 1,000 IUs 4 times a day when I statin, 200 milligrams of diflucan, typically enough to clear yeast in the body? How do you know to stop? Do you recommend maintenance treatment for yeast? Thank you. All right. So I want to clarify something. So your terminology of yeast in the body. So I just want to talk about that. So when somebody has yeast overgrowth, we're typically talking about in the intestinal tract. Now, it is true when you have too many yeast in your intestines that it produces body-wide issues, so it can feel like it's all over. But the reason you have body-wide symptoms is that the yeast in your intestines trigger your immune system to make too many cytokines. And the cytokines go everywhere, producing body-wide symptoms, okay? But to be clear, the yeast is living in the intestines, not in your blood. It could be living in your bladder, that's a possibility, but it's not living in your brain, not living in your ears. Well, not living behind the eardrum, I should put it that way. Sometimes you can get yeast on this side of it. It's not living in your kidneys. So just keep that in mind. It's confined to your intestinal tract, okay? Now, for most of the time, when I treat yeast with the combination of the diflucan and nystatin, that combination works 90% of the time over a 30-day period to clear yeast in most people. There's an occasional person it doesn't work, and I may go 2 months with it. As long as I see improvement in the yeast symptoms, but if their yeast symptoms have gotten better, but they're not all gone, I may continue an additional month. If it did not help the yeast at all, I'm going to look at using a different drug rather than fluconazole, the diflucan. I might use itraconazole, which comes from that family. Okay. All right. Excuse me. There's different green things alive down here in Austin compared to Seattle. So my nose is a little flared up here today. Anyhow, in terms of maintenance therapy, when I design my Lyme treatments and I have somebody that I'm treating for Lyme and I have them on antibiotics, during the treatment, even after I get yeast cleared with the diflucan nystatin, I want to leave them on probiotics and I want to leave them on nystatin, or I want to leave them on an herbal product like a phytostan or something called Capri Plus, either one of those at 2 pills twice a day to police the environment while I have them on antibiotics to keep the yeast at bay, okay? At the end of treatment, when I'm done treating somebody with Lyme, and even if they're all well, what I like to do after we stop the antibiotics, herbal or prescription, is I recommend that my patients stay on probiotics for at least a year and the nystatin for anywhere from 4 to 6 months. or that could be the Capri Plus, or it could be the Phytostan. Okay. All right. Thanks for our question, Mary. Hello, Pat. Let's see. Good evening, Dr. Ross. My daughter has autoimmune encephalitis caused by chronic Lyme and Bartonella infections, which manifests as severe anxiety and OCD. She has been in treatment with doxy for 15 months and some herbs. She has not been able to tolerate other antibiotics. She had some improvement with doxy, but then recently has gotten worse. I am considering doing SOT treatment with her. My question is, have any of your patients done SOT therapy, and what kind of outcomes have they had? So I would urge you to take a look at the article I wrote on SOT. I will admit there are some people that claim benefit, but keep in mind that any treatment we ever do in medicine, there is a around a 30 to 35% placebo effect, meaning if you were to do a double-blind study where you give somebody SOT and you gave somebody a sugar pill, in the group that had the sugar pill, 35% of people will see benefit in their SOT trial. Okay. All right. So in other words, if they think they get SOT, 35% of people will have improvements, probably. I mean, that's the way placebo effect works. The biggest problem with SOT, and I outlined it in that article, is there is no science, any science showing that this works for Lyme disease. I get the idea. The idea with SOT is that we give you this, what is called supportive oligonucleotide therapy. What all those words mean, everyone, is the building blocks for your DNA and your RNA in the body are nucleotides. The DNA is what sits inside your cell, and it's the blueprint that creates information and then is translated into something called RNA. And then the RNA moves out of the center of the cell, out into the middle of the cell. And in the middle of the cell, it joins these protein production factory apparatus called ribosomes. And in a ribosome, the RNA is read and translated into a protein. Okay, that's basically what happens. But supposedly what you're doing with SOT is you're blocking the interpretation with nucleotides. You take the RNA has a certain nucleotide sequence, and then what the SOT is supposed to do is a different nucleotide sequence that sticks to the RNA and prevents it from being read, so that you don't get proteins involved with replication of the germ. Okay, that's in theory. That's what it's supposed to do. Great idea. Okay, I think it's a wonderful concept. Okay, but let's look at the complications here. So first of all, are the difficulties in that working. One difficulty is that nucleotides get destroyed in your blood. There's tens of enzymes in your blood that are designed to destroy nucleotides that get in there. Okay. And think about how complicated this is. If we look at the COVID vaccines, which were essentially nucleotide therapies, okay, that's what they were. To get them in a person, the initial one, the Pfizer vaccine, had to be super refrigerated and cooled, okay? Think of the difficulty of transporting this stuff. And so the company that is making these nucleotides out of Greece, this stuff is being shipped across the water. I don't even know if they're being cooled at all or not. And who knows if the stuff, once it gets in your blood, even makes it in the center of the cells, because it's never been studied in people in Lyme to see if it works. Okay. All right. So I'm doubtful that the stuff even gets in there. The other problem I have with this company that's doing it is they're basing the SOT therapy, the genetic strands that they come up with, based on what they say the germs are in your blood. And to do that, they're doing PCR DNA testing. Okay. So they have to detect which germs are there to develop the right sequence. All right. So I want to just look at this. We know with PCR testing for Lyme that at best, it only finds Lyme 30% of the time when it's there. When I wrote a letter to this company that's doing the SOT therapy to ask them how can they make claims that they're detecting the germs? They said their PCR testing that they use, when I asked them and pressed them about what is the chances that they're missing it, they acknowledge their test may only be accurate 60% of the time at finding a germ when it's there. So I've had people that have done SOT that tell me they're all better because the test showed it wasn't there. What the hell does that mean? The testing will miss it when it's there. That lab even says it misses it 40% of the time. And I think they're overstating what they are able to test for, because we know for Lyme, in fact, that the overwhelming data says PCR testing only finds Lyme when it's there 30% of the time. And also you can make similar arguments for Babesia, Bartonella, et cetera. So my question is, when they send you something, what the heck are they sending you? If their testing is so poor at determining what really is there, what are they sending you? And these claims of benefit that people are having, it could just all be placebo effect. And there's no studies that says this stuff even gets in the cell and does what it does. So I think that, the world of Lyme is full of people that are desperate at times to do well. And I personally, I know that some of my colleagues are doing this, but I have to say, fraud alert, to be honest with you. I'm very skeptical of this one. This one has no science behind it for Lyme. Now, some of these practitioners claim, well, there's evidence it works with certain viruses, and that's true. But those viruses went through extensive testing to show they worked. And they were approved by the Food and Drug Administration, okay? These are known drugs. The ones that some of my colleagues say, well, we have evidence that it works on infections. Well, these were based on technologies and studies that were approved by the Food and Drug Administration with proof that these things actually worked. This company hasn't even published a study to show that their stuff works, okay? So I'm skeptical. I'm very skeptical, all right? So anyhow, I'm sorry to go off on my rant there, but take a look. For more information, I would suggest taking a look at the article that I wrote on SOT in my book, where I kind of explain my misgivings about it. I'm going to have that article in my book, but also it's up live at treatlyme.net as well too, okay? The other thing I'm not sure if your doctors have looked at doing, but somewhere along the way, somebody should have thought to try IVIG, IV immunoglobulins, to see if that would help with your daughter's autoimmune encephalitis. If they haven't, you might want to discuss that with them as well too. Okay? All right. Good luck to you. Good luck to your daughter. Hello, Zipporah. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. What is your view on ozone therapy to treat Lyme? So I don't have a favorable review. Well, I have a mixed review. let me. And again, for more information, you can take a look at my article at treatlyme.net. On treatlyme.net, I actually have looked at, I provide information provided out of a study that was conducted by Lyme Data. Lyme Data is an arm of an organization out of California called LymeDisease.org. And in Lyme Data, they basically have enrolled people that have Lyme, and they periodically query them to ask them certain questions. And so I think maybe 4 years ago now or so, they did a study where they asked people what alternative medicine treatments had they tried and what percent of time did they get improvement. And I believe that for the ozone therapy, it's about 35 or 40% have some improvement. Okay, so I mean, that's not bad, but I want to talk about what the claims are about ozone therapy and which ones I think are accurate and which ones are not. Okay, so ozone, if you go to an ozone therapist, they're going to tell you it kills germs in you. All right, I don't think so, and let me explain why. So if you look at studies that have been done on ozone, if you take a test tube full of germs, which is outside of you, but a test tube full of germs, and you put ozone in it, it will kill those germs. That looks great, okay? But we have to look at what happens in you, all right? And so one of the biggest leading doctors about using ozone therapy, and he uses it for various things, did a study where he actually took test tubes full of germs, and put a very small percentage of blood into the test tube, and then added ozone. And guess what happened? No killing, none at all. All right. And so the truth is, our blood is full of antioxidants that neutralize the killing effect of ozone. The killing effect of ozone is due to its oxidation and its oxidizing effect. Its oxidizing effect damages the DNA of germ, and its oxidizing effect can injure the covering on germs, so they die. Okay. But our blood is full of antioxidants that neutralize that. Okay. So I don't think there's any killing that goes on. Now, I will admit that, and I have seen this, that there are people that do have benefit from doing ozone. But if you will look at the reasons why, there's some studies that suggest that when you take ozone or you do hydrogen peroxide, that there winds up being better oxygen delivery to your cell energy factories called mitochondria. And so you get a burst of energy production out of the mitochondria, and then your immune system starts working better. Your energy feels better. So you feel better. Okay. So I do think that short term, it might produce a better effect of how your energy factories called mitochondria work. The concern I have, though, and as you know, we know from anti-aging medicine that one of the leading reasons that people age is because of oxidation in their cells. Okay. So the oxidation creates cell damage, right? So if we're putting in these oxidation poisons in you, if we do that often enough, we might start creating some cell injury down the road. Okay, so keep that in mind. That's a risk factor. And there's been no long-term studies of people doing repeated ozone treatments to see if we get premature aging, premature cell damage, et cetera. We just don't have those studies. Okay, so my opinion is I think it can be useful for people that are having a hard time budging their energy, and you've done everything else you can to improve mitochondria function. You're still not getting anywhere. I think at that time, it does warrant doing maybe a short course, 6 to 8 treatments of ozone, see if it will make some impact for you. But I'm not a proponent of using it as a germ killer. Okay. All right. And you can read my article on that. Just Google or go to my website in the search bar and write ozone in, and you'll find the article where I review the signs. So you can look at that and see how I came to that conclusion as well, too. Okay. All right. Good luck to you. Hello, Thays. Let's see. I don't know if I said your name correct. I apologize if I butchered that. Hi, Dr. Ross. Congratulations on your wonderful work with Lyme. Well, thank you. Let's see. 2 doubts. Can herbs like cemento and banderol make you thirsty or give you some kind of dehydration? Right after using these herbs, my daughter has very dry lips and feels a compulsive thirst. She says she has the feeling of being dry inside. Is there any risk of continuing to use these herbs while having these signs? 2, we have noticed that a few days after IVIG, which is done regularly every 4 or 5 weeks, Lyme symptoms seem to increase greatly for a few days. While IVIG works great for encephalitis, there is this worsening of Lyme symptoms. Is it somehow possible for IVIG to activate the bacteria? Are there any studies that have analyzed this? Thank you. Take care of yourself. Thanks. So, Taste, there is a statement that I have, and if you participate in webinars before, you'll know this one. And that is my saying is anything can happen to anyone with anything. All right. So what that means is there are common side effects that are well known, and there are uncommon things that happen that are side effects that do not happen in everyone. All right. So I have to tell you, I have not seen, and I use a lot of banderol and cement in my practice. I have not seen anyone complain of or have a side effect of feeling dry inside or having dryness in the mouth. I just haven't seen it. So I don't know if that's a common side effect, but it's clearly something that's happening in your daughter. And so what you may want to do is to try to figure out which of those herbs it is and stop it. And then as a substitute for either one of them, you could look at a Japanese knotweed, or you could even look at using something called teasel root And both of those I would dose the same way that I do the Cemento and the Banderol. Okay, those are some options for you to consider for your daughter as well. Okay, so try to figure out which one of those is giving that dryness to her. Okay, and then in terms of the IVIG, it's very interesting because there's good evidence that IVIG does help with the encephalitis and can help with neuropathy. If you are a person that has Lyme and has documented immunoglobulin deficiencies, that can help Lyme infection as well too. And those tend to be the people that we use IVIG on, okay? I don't know in somebody that has, I haven't seen any science, it doesn't mean it's out there, but I haven't seen any science that has looked at people with Lyme that have normal antibody levels to figure out if they do get some activation of their Lyme from being on the IVIG. I don't know. I honestly don't know about that. Okay. All right. Good luck to you. Good luck to your daughter. Hello, Kelly. Let's see. Will cognitive impairment and memory loss get better with treatment of Lyme and mold? The answer is generally yes, because a lot of that cognitive impairment and memory loss is related to cytokines. It's also, in the case of mold toxicity, related to the direct effect of the mold toxins. And usually over time, all of those will get better. Okay. It may take time, but the answer is yes, they should. Okay. All right. Good luck, Kelly. Hello, Jonella. Let's see. Is it better to do stem cell therapy in the US or better outcomes in Panama, Mexico, or Cayman Islands? All right. So briefly, stem cell therapy, how can I say this? So if we look at stem cell therapy, there's different kinds of stem cells, all right? So in theory, a stem cell is a cell that potentially can become any kind of cell, all right? But that's not true. Basically, there are the only type of stem cells that are available out there that can turn into any kind of tissue, including immune cells, including brain cells, including joint cells, that potentially could fix anything, are embryonic stem cells. Here in the States, what is done is umbilical stem cells and what are known as stromal or fat stem cells. Those stem cells, although they can develop into numerous types of tissue, are actually pre-programmed only to develop into connective tissue, or in the case of stromal cells, into fat tissues. Okay, so they cannot become everything. All right. Here in the States, we can't do embryonic stem cell therapies. It's outlawed, basically. So it is possible if in Panama or Mexico, if they're doing embryonic stem cells, you may have a better chance of having a better outcome because they can fix anything. Okay. Now, LymeDisease.org and its My Lyme data study looked at outcomes that people had doing stem cell therapies. And here in the States, the benefit only occurred in 3% of people. And the main reason probably is they weren't getting embryonic stem cells. They were getting stromal and umbilical cord stem cells. Okay, so keep that in mind. It's an expensive treatment that the data, at least here in the States, says it doesn't really work. But again, the problem is that these weren't embryonic stem cells that were done. Okay, so you need to talk to your source, and at a minimum, look to see how they're doing embryonic stem cells. If they're not, based on that My Lyme data, I question, and based on what I see in my practice, I would question the benefit you're going to have at a great cost as well too. Okay, all right. Good luck. Hello, Aline. Let's see. Hello, Dr. Ross. Thank you a lot for your webinars. Can treating mold candida issues raise liver enzymes? And what is the best way to support the liver? I have used various prescription antifungals and supplements, and they seem to always make my liver enzymes jump by quite a bit, and then they go down again when I stop. The fact that this happens with all of them makes me question whether this has anything to do with drug-induced toxicity, or can it be a die-off symptom? All right. So basically the azoles, that family of medications that kills mold and kills candida, can raise liver enzymes. And I acknowledge that. Most of us acknowledge it. The concern about liver enzymes is a sign of liver inflammation. And if that liver inflammation becomes severe enough, it can lead to liver scarring. I'm okay with elevations occurring that don't go above 2 times the upper end of the lab normal. So if the lab says a normal range on AST enzyme is 20 to 40, and a person has a number of 79, I'm okay. All right. But I do try to support the liver. And what is a useful way of supporting the liver when you're on one of those medications is glutathione. And I have people take the liposomal glutathione product by Research Nutritionals called Trifortify, a teaspoon 1 time a day. Sometimes I have to do a teaspoon twice a day on that. Okay. All right. All right. Listen, everyone, I'm renting this room, and I've got to be out of here by 7:30, which means there's some closing up that I have to do. So I'm going to shorten tonight's webinar to 1 hour and 21 minutes, I guess 1 hour and 22 minutes maybe, and so that I can close this room down and not get an extra charge for being here. So it's been good being with you here tonight. Keep an eye out for tomorrow's email, where I will send you notice that the recording is ready, including a synopsis of what we talked about tonight. And in there, I'll have links to the next set of webinars that will begin in November. That means we're going to be off for the next 2 weeks here, okay? The other thing, just to if you would help me, I'm trying to reach as many people as possible. And I know many of you are getting benefit here. I can tell by your questions. Others will get benefit as well, too. So help me reach people. If you would do me the favor of sending on these emails to others that you think might get benefit, I'd appreciate that. Help me to help people. Okay, I appreciate that. And good night, everyone. It's been good being here with you tonight. And I hope the next few weeks go well for everyone. Bye-bye.